though often overshadowed in the aftermath of World War I. The 1917 Houston riots stands as a pivotal yet painful chapter in American history. This event, difficult as it is to confront, provides vital insight into the complex racial dynamics that shaped the United States a century ago, long overlooked in mainstream historical accounts. The riot has drawn renewed attention in recent years as scholars and activists revisit its significance. For decades, the black soldiers of the 24th Infantry Regiment were vilified as instigators. However, a more nuanced narrative has since emerged, one that reveals how deep-seated racial tensions, views, and systemic injustice within the U.S. military led to the tragic uprising. On July 27, 1917, the U.S. Army ordered the 3rd Battalion of the all-black 24th Infantry Regiment to relocate from Columbus, New Mexico, to Houston, Texas, with America's recent entry into World War I. The War Department had begun building 2 new military installations in the area. The 24th Infantry's task was to guard the construction of one of these, Camp Logan. Trouble arose almost immediately. At the time, Houston was rigidly segregated under Jim Crow laws. The newly arrived soldiers found themselves facing the same segregation in their accommodations and drinking facilities. These men serving their country were understandably outraged and vocal about their mistreatment. Tensions intensified when Houston's police force began targeting the black soldiers. Around noon on August 23, 1917, 2 officers from the Houston Police Department interrupted a group of young black men who were reportedly gambling in the city's predominantly black San Felipe neighborhood. The officers fired shots into the air and chased the fleeing men. Officer Sparks entered the home of Sarah Travers, a black woman, and when he found none of the suspects, he handcuffed her anyway and forced her outside. Sparks and Officer Daniels called in the arrest at a nearby patrol box. Private Alonzo Edwards from the 24th Infantry approached and offered to take responsibility for Travers, although the officers denied any wrongdoing. Edwards questioned their treatment of the woman. In response, they pistol whipped him and arrested him. Later that day, Corporal Charles Baltimore, military policeman, approached the officers to ask about Edwards. He too was pistol whipped, had shots fired at him, and was ultimately beaten and arrested after being discovered hiding under a bed. Rumors quickly spread through Camp Logan that Baltimore had been killed by the police. As anger among the soldiers reached a breaking point, Baltimore was brought back to camp badly, beaten but alive, momentarily calming the situation. The riot, the calm, did not last long. That evening, rumors swirled that a white mob was preparing to storm the camp. In an effort to maintain order, Major Snow, the battalion's commander, revoked all passes and increased the camp's guard detail. Despite his efforts, he soon discovered some of his men gathering weapons in a supply tent. He assembled his troops and warned them that it would be utterly foolhardy to take the law into their own hands. His pleas were ignored. One soldier, who had secretly brought his rifle, fired a shot into the air, claiming the mob had arrived. Panic spread, and soldiers rushed to arm themselves with rifles and ammunition. Fear quickly turned to rage, and the men began firing into surrounding buildings. With the white commander gone, leadership fell to Sergeant Vita Henry, who organized roughly 150 men to march on Houston. Henry led his soldiers through nearby neighborhoods, ordering them to shoot at civilian buildings with lights on. When 2 cars passed by, one carrying white passengers, the other black, the soldiers opened fire on the white occupants. The group marched nearly 2.5 miles, 4 kilometers, to the San Felipe district, where they finally encountered police resistance. The Houston Police Department, caught off guard, was unprepared for the armed soldiers. 2 officers were killed at the scene, Key, and the 3rd later died from his wounds. The march continued until the soldiers encountered an open-topped car carrying a man in military uniform. Mistaking him for a policeman, they fired. killing Captain Joseph W. Matz of the Illinois National Guard. Realizing the gravity of killing not only civilians, but also a white officer, the soldiers panicked. The group quickly dispersed, and only a few returned to Camp Logan with a shaken Sergeant Henry. Upon returning, Henry told his men he planned to end his life. His body was found the next day with a crushed skull and a stab wound to the shoulder. Whether self-inflicted or not remains unclear by the time the violence subsided. 17 people lay dead, including 4 police officers, 2 soldiers, and 9 civilians. In the days that followed, more victims died from their injuries, pushing the death toll even higher. Repercussions. By dawn the next day, Houston was under martial law. The soldiers who had not fled were rounded up, disarmed, and detained. Many who tried to escape were found hiding during a house-to-house search of San Felipe. Court-martials began almost immediately. In total, 118 soldiers faced a trial with only one officer, Major Harry Greer, who had no legal experience, assigned to defend them. He was given just 10 days to prepare. Due process was clearly not a priority for black soldiers accused of mutiny. Over 22 days, roughly 200 witnesses testified, producing over 2,000 pages of statements. Many witnesses struggled to identify anyone, clearly due to the chaos, darkness, and rain that night. Some witnesses were allegedly granted immunity or leniency in exchange for their testimony, raising questions about the trial's fairness. It became the largest murder trial in U.S. history. Ultimately, 19 soldiers were executed and 110 more were convicted of mutiny, murder, and assault. Those executed were buried in unmarked graves. Their remains were not rediscovered until 1987 at Fort Sam Houston, identified only by soda bottles marked with their names over the decades. The Houston riot has evolved from an overlooked incident to a symbol of the racial injustice faced by black soldiers during World War I. What was once dismissed or ignored is now acknowledged for its deep impact on race relations and military justice in the United States. As awareness of systemic racism has grown, the riot is recognized today as a sobering reminder of the challenges African American soldiers endured in serving a country that denied them equal rights. Recently, the U.S. Army overturned 110 convictions from the Houston riot, acknowledging that the men had served honorably and were wronged because of their race. After decades of civil rights advocacy, the military admitted the trials were unjust. The Houston riots commemoration continues to serve as a powerful reminder of the ongoing struggle for equality and justice, urging reflection and dialogue on the legacy of past injustices and the work still to be done.